And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And 2/3 of the economy may be in recession, and people may be worried about a new energy crisis, and the war has definitely been bad for the economy. However, stocks are rallying despite the Trump energy crisis, despite tariff crises. What is going on? And what's coming on gas prices? The seashell threat has come roaring back, and Trump says that the Iran war is over, though we appear to be in the middle of a war. What does it all mean? It's a pleasure to speak to a friend of the show, Rick Newman, who is the founder, editor, and publisher of the Pinpoint Press on Substack. And Rick, what is going on right now? Are we at the edge of doom, or the edge of a new golden age economically?
It depends whether you own stocks. If you are lucky enough to own stocks, and I'm not kidding, I track this on a monthly basis in something I call the Better Off Index, and we track changes in the economy year over year, four basic metrics. And that index, that Better Off Index, is doing great, including stocks. But when you take stocks out of the mix, it's not doing well at all. And that tells you what we've been seeing in the headlines every day, which is the stock market is on a tear. It's hitting stratospheric levels, new record highs. And it's leaving the real economy behind. So the stock market sometimes diverges from the real economy. I think the divergence we're seeing now, I don't know if I'd use the word unprecedented because we had the dot-com boom in the late 1990s. That was probably another example. But it is certainly doing way better than the real economy. And that means if you're an investor, you're doing great. And if you're somebody who lives on your paycheck and not your investments, you're not doing great at all.
Okay, in terms of how many people in America, what percentage of Americans actually own something in the stock market, have some of the investments from which they can benefit, that's about half the people, half the families who live in this country?
Yeah, so Gallup does these surveys once or twice a year, and they show that something like 55% of households, people in households, to speak English, say they have stock market investments, but that doesn't mean that 55% of Americans are benefiting from this boom in stocks that we've been seeing. For people who do hold stocks, most people who have stock investments, that's almost always in a retirement account, a 401k plan, or something like that. In general, that's not accessible to you if you're still working, or you have to pay a penalty to tap that money. And when you look at the sort of data, who actually owns the majority of stocks by wealth percentile, the top 10% of Americans, the wealthiest 10% that is, own 87% of all stocks, which means that the bottom 90% only own 13% of stocks. So that tells you who's really benefiting from new record highs in the stock market. It's helping ordinary people a little bit, and it's helping wealthy people a lot.
And the main reason for the strength in the stock market, which is defying all the occurrences in the war and the apparent end of the ceasefire, we will see. But the apparent reason for the strength, you argue, has to do with the speculation about AI, because there seems to be a very strong belief that this is going to have long-range benefits of a profound nature for the U.S. economy. Explain.
Right. So I made a reference earlier to the dot-com boom of the 1990s. So a lot of people are asking, is this similar to that mania? And if it is, that would portend that this bubble is going to burst, which is what happened starting in 2000, and stocks went down and sideways for several years. There is one really important difference between what's happening now and the dot-com boom of the late 1990s, which is that the companies with the stocks that are rising the most are very profitable companies. If people who remember the dot-com boom remember there were a lot of these companies, toys.com is a famous example, or pets.com. These were internet startups that had no profits, and they hardly had any revenue, and people were buying these stocks because they thought, wow, these are this is going to be a whole new type of economy, and these are going to be the dominant names. Well, it turns out back then revenue and profits did matter, and that was a big contributor to the bust. So the companies that are going up by the most now, they're going up because their earnings are going up. That is after tax profits. And as those profits go up, the estimates for future profits have been going up. So we have seen really remarkable upward revisions for the profitability of these companies during the next quarter, for the full year of 2026, and in the future after that. So it's real earnings that are driving these stock prices upwards. So that is why, for sure, the energy crisis, what you might call a self-imposed energy crisis we had because of the war in Iran, without a doubt, is weighing on stocks. But I think the way to look at it is, if we didn't have the energy crisis, stock values would probably be even higher, because you'd still have the tailwind provided by all this AI spending. Plus, you wouldn't have the headwind of soaring energy prices. So that doesn't mean stocks are not going to go down. They could go down. There could be some kind of reality check that comes along and says, hold on a minute, we didn't anticipate for this problem or that problem. But at least the rally is based on profits.
Meanwhile, there is a comment that I wanted to get your response to by one of the great economic thinkers of our time.
Michael Medved?
No, it's Donald Trump.
Okay. Even better.
And here is Rick Newman will give his response to the profound insights of the leader of the free world. Clip 5.
I could, with one swipe of the pen, I could say, let's have no employment, and I'll hire 1 million people or 2 million people. I say, we just hired 1 million people and we have absolutely no employment. And that's what they would do. They'd have bad numbers coming up, so they'd hire a couple of 100,000 people and the numbers would look okay. With me, it's the exact opposite. We terminate a lot of federal jobs that are unnecessary. And they don't like me for doing it, but a year later, they like me because they end up having a much better job, oftentimes in a place where they'd much rather live.
Your response, Rick Newman?
That's the guy who declared corporate bankruptcy 6 times, justifying. So I guess what he was talking about is he was justifying all the federal layoffs, right? I mean, on that, you can make an argument that the federal government was too large, but there's no rational case to say the federal government is too large, so we're going to come in and we're going to randomly handpick agencies and just kill them or wipe out their labor force and their staffing. And I mean, I'd love to see surveys of the actual people who lost their jobs, 200 or 300,000 federal workers saying, "Oh, I feel so much better now. It's so much better." Now that I was able to leave Washington, D.C. and move to Ottumwa, Iowa, and work in the insurance, because there was just a job waiting for me that paid 20% more. I'll tell you what, I'll see if I can get a survey like that underway.
Well, meanwhile, I hope you continue the message. There's a survey today that said 81% of Americans below the age of 30 look at economic conditions and say they are bad or terrible. And we get better news than that from Rick Newman. You can look for his wisdom at the Pinpoint Press on Substack. And quick last question. How high does gas price go? Does it get to $8?
From what I can tell, we're going to get to about $4.70 based on where oil prices are right now. If oil prices go another $10 higher, for sure, we're going to get $5 for the summer driving season. Happy Memorial Day, everybody.
And happy summertime and springtime, too. Rick Newman, always a pleasure having you. We will be right back on the Medved Show.
Sign up today for our free weekly newsletter at michaelmedved.com.
And there is a new report from CNN about President Trump writing a letter to Congress saying, hey, I don't have to ask Congress for anything, for any permission, because the military action has ended. But the military action seems not to have ended right now. And does that make a difference in terms of the president's relationship to Congress? Here was the CNN report. This is clip 13.
Now, one thing you have to keep in mind here is that he wrote a letter to Congress, essentially saying that he didn't have to ask Congress for any permission because all of the military action had been halted. So that's likely to play a factor into whether or not he is going to continue those strikes, which of course will open up a whole new door when it comes to the War Powers Act. They have been really relying on this idea that the ceasefire ended the war, therefore they don't have to get Congress involved. Now, it wasn't just in that interview where he refused to answer about the ceasefire. We were standing just feet from him while he was exiting an event, asking him the question. Several reporters, he looked at us and he walked away. Several other reporters had calls with him today in which he refused to answer this question about the ceasefire. Now, when I talked to these U.S. officials, they maintain that there are still conversations happening behind closed doors and that President Trump is looking for an off-ramp here.
Okay, meanwhile, speaking of an off-ramp, Rachel Maddow was speaking on MS Now about some of the polling for President Trump, which actually seems to be sending a message requiring some attention by the GOP for them to hold on to their control of Congress. This is clip 18.
The latest Washington Post ABC News Ipsos poll has Trump negative 25 overall. He's 25 points underwater on his overall approval rating. And that's kind of the high point for him in this poll. Minus 25 is kind of as good as it gets. On the economy, his approval rating is 31 points underwater. On the Iran war, his approval rating is 33 points underwater. On inflation, Trump's approval rating is 45 points underwater. On Trump's handling of the cost of living, which is effectively what he ran on to get a second term in the White House, Trump is 53 points underwater. 76% of the country disapproves of Trump's handling of the cost of living. He's minus 53.
Okay, which indicates that maybe today in the primaries in Indiana and elsewhere around the country, he may not be such a big advantage. This despite the fact that, as we all know, he aces those cognitive tests. Here is Jon Stewart on Trump's bragging about his status as the only president who regularly takes those cognitive tests. This is clip 16.
I'm the only president to take a cognitive test. You know, the first question is very easy. It's a lion, a giraffe, a bear, and a shark. They say, which one is the bear?
You're the only president to take the cognitive test. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that you're the only president that happens to? That for some reason, every time you go to the doctor, which is a lot, the doctor's always like, hey, while you're here, if you could come over here and just explain very quickly, which one of these is the bear?
And there's also President Trump's mathematics ability, which is astonishing, as you are about to hear from the president.
Everyone right. And these are tough questions. These are tough questions, you know. They say, take a number, any number. Okay, I'll take 99, multiply times 9, okay? Divide it by 3, good. Add 4,293, that's good. Divide by 2, subtract 93, divide by 9, what is your answer? Now, they go a little slower than that, but not much. I don't want to waste a lot of time. But there aren't a lot of people that get it right. I got it right, you know?
Okay, that was him speaking to a senior group in Florida, not any kind of record of how many of them got the answer right. It seemed challenging. Meanwhile, Van Jones is commenting about the prospect of John Fetterman actually joining the Republican Party. He is a moderate Democrat, and Van Jones on CNN says there has to be room for that kind of moderate to make a viable Democratic Party. This is clip 17.
Look, I think he is a moderate Democrat, and that should not be illegal in this party. my God, you have to agree on 100% of the Berkeley, California agenda to be a Democrat? It doesn't make any sense. We've always had moderate Democrats, progressive Democrats. We've always had some people who didn't fit the mold. From Manchin, going back in the day, Scoop Jackson. Like, what the heck? Like, it just shows you how nutty things have gotten, that somebody who wants to stick up for Israel and doesn't want an open border somehow now has to be a Republican. That's completely insane. I think that John Fetterman would not fit in the Republican Party any better than I would. He is 93% on the Democrat side. 93%.
Which kind of indicates his future probably continues with the Democratic Party. Meanwhile, there is a White House crowd applauding after Trump talks about, again, teasing his supporters on the idea that he may have yet another term of president, a third term. Really? This is clip 15.
Businesses can deduct 100% of the cost of new facilities, equipment, and capital investment in the first year. It used to take 38 years of deduction. Now you get it done in one. You can take one so you can expand. I think that's what made us so successful in the first term, but now we have it for a 10-year period. So you have it for a while. I really was going to make it for a 1-year period. That would mean you spend all your money immediately. Now, unfortunately, I gave you too much time. I was sort of against that. I said, let's do it for a shorter period of time, but we did it. It's the right thing. And this way, when I get out of office in, let's say, 8 or 9 years from now, I'll be able to use it. I'll be able to use it myself.
The reality is there is a Constitution of the United States, and that Constitution of the United States says, in the 22nd Amendment, no, only 2 terms. Meanwhile, a suspicious person blocks from the White House, leads to a shooting match with the Secret Service. What happened? We'll give you a profile coming up on the Medved Show.
The greatest show on God's green earth.
The whole thing is a scam, and it's a shame, and it's a disgrace to our country.
The Michael Medved Show.
Yesterday, around 3:30 in the afternoon, Eastern Time, there was an incident in the vicinity of the White House involving shooting and the Secret Service. And basically the report on what happened, at least what we know so far, was offered by CNN. This is clip 12.
The U.S. Secret Service says one person was shot by law enforcement just blocks from the White House, right near the Washington Monument. And CNN's Brian Todd is on the scene. Brian, what are you learning?
Right, Jake. We can tell you that this incident began at about 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, where, according to Matthew Quinn, the deputy director of the Secret Service, it started down this way. We are near the intersection of 15th Street and Independence Avenue. It started down this way around the White House, near the White House complex, according to Matthew Quinn. That's where he says that plainclothed Secret Service officers spotted a man with what he called a visual print of a weapon. That the man then fled briefly, and he must have fled basically from the White House complex, which is down there, up this way. This is 15th Street right here, up this way toward Independence Avenue. At this point, somewhere around here, the man, according to Matthew Quinn, withdrew his weapon and fired at officers. They fired back and engaged him. They injured him, but also a bystander was caught in the crossfire. The bystander, according to Matthew Quinn, was a juvenile who...
This is all terribly sad and terribly problematic. And it has to do with something that we've been talking about in our conversations over at YouTube, which is the populist violence that we seem to have here, where everybody is taking it upon himself or herself. Who knows what Michael Marks, who is apparently the name of the shooter, what he had in mind. But it is not an indication of national health that these things continue to happen. Meanwhile, something that is much better news is President Trump's vision for his National Guard of American Heroes is growing larger and most likely more expensive than his initial estimates, with the latest plans calling for reflecting pools, dining facilities, and an amphitheater alongside 250 life-size statues of notable Americans. The plans have expanded to the point that they could require significant redevelopment of West Potomac Park, an area of mostly sports fields near the National Mall, according to documents obtained by the New York Times. The statues alone could cost more than the $40 million already approved for the project by Congress, according to the Trump administration's estimates. Now, this may surprise some people out there. I actually think this is kind of a cool idea, and it seems to be decently run so far. The illustrations of the people they would illustrate with the 250 statues include undoubtedly worthy Americans, and the idea of giving attention to heroes in all fields, in music and in science and in politics and in teaching and in everything, it seems to me a worthwhile idea to encourage civic virtue. Construction has yet to begin, raising questions about whether Mr. Trump will run out of time and money to deliver the exhibitions before the end of his second term. If Mr. Trump were to solicit donor funds, as he has done with his ballroom project, it could renew ethical questions about attempts to court favor with the White House. But the latest drawings for the Garden of Heroes depict a hero's walk connecting themed areas dedicated to categories of American greatness, including politicians, soldiers, scientists, activists, artists, and athletes. The set of honorees is eclectic. George Washington, Ronald Reagan, and Amelia Earhart are on a list circulated by the administration, along with Elvis Presley, Kobe Bryant, Dr. Seuss, and others. One of the most prominent features in the plans would be a large amphitheater carved into the landscape at the water's edge, suggesting the space is intended to function both as a performance venue and as a ceremonial gathering place. President Trump's National Garden of American Heroes will be built to reflect the awesome splendor of our country's timeless exceptionalism, said David Engel, a White House spokesman. President Trump continues to beautify and honor the nation's capital during America's historic semi-quincentennial celebration. Now, again, some of this stuff, like building that Arc of Triumph that's supposed to be 250 feet tall, is nonsensical. And spending all that money to redo the reflecting pool at the Lincoln Memorial, But this one, again, it's hard not to think that this could end up being a welcome addition to Washington. Proposed in his first term, Mr. Trump initially hoped to have the project completed by July 4th of this year, the 250th anniversary of American independence, but officials are now hoping to have a few dozen statues ready to unveil in time. A person familiar with the plan said, with the remainder of the project to be completed by the end of Mr. Trump's term. Mr. Trump denounced those actions. These are talking about the actions back during the reaction with the Black Lives Matter movement, where there were so many statues that were taken down and trashed. Mr. Trump denounced those actions as an attempt to erase our values, and he signed an executive order at that time, back in 2020, authorizing the Monument Garden. The election of Joseph R. Biden as president interrupted those plans, but since Mr. Trump took office for a second time, he has taken the project up again in earnest. The description of Martin Luther King Jr., for instance, praises the civil rights leader for having a can-do spirit, but makes no direct mention of the racism that he fought. Now, that seems hard to mention Martin Luther King without talking about his battle to overcome segregation and racism, but they can get that right. That should be possible. Under the journalists category, there are two honorees as American heroes: Edward R. Murrow of CBS and Alex Trebek, who hosted the game show Jeopardy. Okay, that's a problem because Trebek was born in Canada, but he later became an American citizen. Artists who are selected will receive awards of up to $200,000 per statue, which must be made of marble, granite, bronze, copper, or brass. That price is a relative bargain. Outdoor public sculptures can cost nearly $1 million each to produce in cities like New York. Still, even if the statues cost $200,000 each for a total of $50 million, there is not enough money appropriated by Congress to pay for them. And there is the matter of redevelopment of the land after a reflecting pool and all the rest is in the latest plans. Okay, it's intriguing and not going away. Neither are we. We will be back with the tariffs giving us more money than we know what to do with. So says the president. Coming up on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, there is a piece in the New York Times by Linda Q, and it's important. The title, The Ebb and Flow of Political Violence, the Threats to American Presidents. And she brings up the fact that, love him or hate him, President Trump has been more of a target than any other presidents that we have had, other than, well, Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama. What is fascinating about this study is that she is looking at is that most political violence in recent decades has come from the far right, she says, but far left violence, that's the side where the violence is rapidly rising. Overall, from 1948 to 2018, the probability of a violent right-wing attack was almost twice as high as that of a left-wing attack in the United States, according to a comprehensive 2022 study by extremism experts. Far-left terrorism historically tend to select targets that symbolize the status quo. They said. They tend to attack government and law enforcement targets, and these targets tend to be better defended, yielding, thankfully, lower casualty rates. In contrast, far-right terrorists tend to target individuals who are members of racial, religious, and other minorities, and this yields higher casualty rates. An analysis in September of terrorist attacks from the 1990s through July 2025 by the Center for Strategic and International Studies show that right-wing terrorist attacks outpaced left-wing attacks from the 1990s to 2024. But the analysis noted 2025 was the first time in 30 years in which left-wing attacks outnumbered right-wing attacks, that finding remained true through the end of 2025, the authors of the analysis said in an interview. Ronald Feynman, who is a retired professor at Florida Atlantic University, clearly Donald Trump has been one of the most threatened presidents overall, alongside Abraham Lincoln and Barack Obama. Mr. Feynman added that the threat level was metastasizing with more sophisticated methods to threaten the top government leaders, an assessment shared by Secret Service officials. Meanwhile, there is President Trump himself, who talks about the use of tariffs as being an ultimate blessing and really pennies from heaven, except trillions of dollars from heavens, he says. This is clip 11, President Trump.
And nobody can believe the $18 trillion number that we gave you, because it's a record for any country, not just here. It's for any country. And a lot of that had to do with November 5th, but a lot of it had to do with tariffs. We charge tariffs to companies when they come in. A couple of you were just saying to me that you're getting hurt by China and other countries making a product that's not as good, but it's less money because of the fact that there were no guards, no safeties for you. And we've changed a lot of it. Some have said you've absolutely saved our business. But because of the use of tariffs, we have all this money, because if they come in and build a business here, if they build their plant here, there are no tariffs. Jobless claims just hit the lowest level since 1969, and more Americans are working today than at any time in the history of our country. So we have more people working today than at any time in the history of our country. That's a beautiful thing.
He's speaking to a senior citizen community, and what's amazing is, speaking to that community, in Florida, he attacked the idea of Medicare. Listen.
Medicaid, Medicare, medical crap than any human being. Where's Dr. Oz? Where the hell are you, Stand by? He's great. It's the most boring trip I've ever made. He's telling me about Medicare, Medicaid.
Okay. Most older people in particular don't necessarily think of Medicare as Medicrap. They might do better. Meanwhile, there is a film out there that was nominated for multiple Oscars. It was actually favored to win important Oscars, but didn't. But it's still an interesting and compelling film. It's certainly the greatest film ever made about table tennis, about ping pong. Yes, it's called Marty Supreme, starring Timothée Chalamet, a 2025 film that is now streaming across the country. Listen.
Now it's time for Michael Medved's Eye on Entertainment.
Gwyneth Paltrow plays a once-celebrated movie star who's trying desperately to revive her career and gets detoured by a relationship with a shoe salesman who dreams of winning fame by playing table tennis, ping pong. Loosely based on an actual character from the early 1950s. The protagonist, energetically played by Timothée Chalamet, sees himself as Marty Supreme, which is the title of the film.
Let me ask you something. Do you make money at this little table tennis thing?
Not yet.
Do you have a job?
No.
How do you live?
Well, I live with the confidence if I believe in myself, the money will follow.
Well, the ruthless pursuit of money is Marty's all-consuming obsession, and with that focus, Marty is willing to damage and exploit even those people who are closest to him. The characterization is electrifying, combining loathsome selfishness with undeniable charisma and bringing Timothée Chalamet serious consideration as an Oscar nominee for Best Actor.
Marty, I'm going to make you an offer. I got to do it completely on my own.
Every man for himself where I come from. That's just how I grew up.
I don't think you understand the stakes here.
And it's only a matter of time before I'm staring at you from the cover of a Wheaties bar.
You think it's that simple? Yeah, I do.
Well, the plot isn't that simple, and after all kinds of shenanigans of dubious legality and morality, the main character's ambitions lead him to a climactic and extended showdown with another world-caliber ping-pong player that unfolds in Tokyo. Director Josh Safdie, who won critical acclaim for Uncut Gems featuring Adam Sandler, does a marvelous job recreating the atmosphere of post-World War II Brooklyn. The rating for the movie is a well-deserved R, with many scenes of graphic and mostly cruel sexuality. 2.5 stars for the often absorbing Marty Supreme. And just a note, despite the president's comments, the U.S. unemployment rate is not at its absolute lowest ever right now. As of March 2026, the national unemployment rate is 4.3%. While that's low by historical standards, this is higher than the 50-year low of 3.4%. achieved in April of 2023. The rate has increased from 4.4% in February 2026 and generally risen from lower levels since seen in 2023. Meanwhile, coming up tomorrow on the Medved Show, there is a big CNN debate tonight with the 7 top contenders for that highly competitive race to become California's next governor. Gavin Newsom, of course, is term limited. They will all face off in a debate tonight, which sets up a very real possibility that there could be no Democratic candidate on November's ballot. Why? Because the 2 Republicans would actually end up getting higher vote totals in the jungle primary and being the only ones qualified for November. We'll consider that possibility. We will also be finding out, thanks to Politico, whether Trump is a kingmaker or a lame duck, because there are primaries today in which he has taken a very passionate side. How's he going to do? And we'll be speaking to a writer from Atlantic about his piece, Trump's Giant Face is Everywhere, the festooning of the president's name and likeness across Washington, D.C., consistent with his authoritarian and narcissistic tendencies, ? We'll get to that and more in This Greatest Nation on God's Green Earth.